think life as an entrepreneur is definitely about learning.
Roller coaster ride.
I'm an opportunist at the end of the day.
Well, Foodzie all began, I guess, out of my passion for food that I kind of recognized when I was in college.
I think a lot of it has been, reaching out to advisors that can help.
I think when you take investment from someone, it's kind of like a marriage. You're with each other for better or worse.
And I remember like mile 10, my heart's just pounding. I'm thinking, wouldn't this make a great CNN cover story? A guy sells business, next day, drops dead.
My name is Nick, and I'm one of the co-founders of Foodzie, and I'm also the current lead engineer.
My name's Emily. I am also co-founder of Foodzie, and I head up all the marketing here at Foodzie.
My name is Rob Lafave, and I'm also a co-founder and CEO of Foodzie.
I'm Matt Mullenweg, and I'm the founder of Automattic and the co-founder of WordPress.
So my name's Chris Friedland. I'm the founder and president of Build.com.
Well, Foodzie all began, I guess, out of my passion for food that I kind of recognized when I was in college and knew I wanted to do something related to food. And I went through various things that sort of were testing out what that thing was, and ended up taking a job with a company called The Fresh Market in Greensboro, North Carolina. And I managed their private label brand, which gave me the opportunity to interact with a lot of producers and trying to bring them into the store. And what I realized was how hard it is for small producers actually to make it into a retailer like that, and to get people access to these kinds of products. And so Foodzie was created out of giving them that place to be able to directly connect with consumers and to be able to share their story and their awesome products. And yeah, so that's where the idea began, and then hooked up with these two who we had met our first week of college actually at Virginia Tech.
I had started a blog called Photomat, and where I was posting photos, my views in the world, standard blog stuff. I was using movable type, I think, when I started, and then I had switched to a software called B2 Cafe Log, which was sort of the software that WordPress was based on. Basically, B2 Cafe Log was abandoned, and the software wasn't being updated anymore, so myself and a fellow in London named Mike Little sort of took stewardship of it and started updating the software, adding new features, things we wanted to see, and that was the beginning of WordPress. I sort of felt the itch to do my own company, and that became Automattic. Sort of to see the opportunities around, well, what if we took the software that we think is really cool and made it accessible to a really wide audience? Everyone in the world can just start a blog with a click or two.
Came up with the idea of selling faucets on the internet. And we originally incorporated the company as Faucet Direct, and we started selling faucets back in early 2000. The business continued to grow and scale, and we recognized there was an opportunity to sell more than just faucets over the internet. We decided that we'd take on the entire home improvement industry. So we rebadged ourselves Improvement Direct and started launching these other niche websites in different categories. We launched Lighting Direct, HandleSets.com, Tools Direct, and just continued to expand. It wasn't until recently where we realized Improvement Direct, kind of as a holding company name, made sense, but didn't make sense as a brand that we wanted to take it unified to the public. So rebadged ourselves as of this year, Build.com Inc., and we're using Build.com as kind of a platform.
When we kind of came up with the idea of Foodzie, we went to a program called Techstars, which was in the summer of 2008, and it gave us an opportunity to not just launch the product, but kind of have a soft launch where we could kind of iterate on the product and engage other mentors and advisors. And So we built out the product, had an early release that we basically used to test the platform, and then launched it later in 2008, right around December timeframe.
In the beginning, there was WordPress.org, the software, and we were seeing a lot of challenges that our users were having that we couldn't address with it, making the software better. Things like, well, it's really hard to set up a MySQL database and FTP the files up and everything like that. There's not something I can do inside of WordPress that makes that easier, per se. So making a hosting service was an obvious first opportunity for the business.
Everybody thought to start an e-commerce company you needed a massive amount of resources and planning and servers and all of this scale. But us as computer science majors said, you could probably do this with a handful of commodity hardware and some open source software. So when I went out and was talking to people about launching this e-commerce business, people said, oh, you're gonna need all this capital, you're gonna need all these other resources. So us as software developers got together and we put together that we built the whole platform ourselves with a couple commodity pieces of server. I think we spent $700-800 total. But I mean, the real work behind it was when we got into e-commerce back in 2000, there were no standards out there. There was no, this is the way you go to market and do business. So we had to do a lot of pioneering. No one had really figured out how to successfully do e-commerce back in 2000 and make money doing it, especially in a bootstrap manner like we had.
Yeah, it's definitely hard because when you start as an entrepreneur, you're doing everything yourself. So to know when to step in and hire another person to take over a piece of it, or to, I don't know, bring in different processes or pay to offset a certain part of it. I think that's actually the hardest part of scaling, is knowing when to stop doing it yourself. I think we've learned a lot about that over time.
That's absolutely true.
I think distributed companies are the future. In fact, I think it'd be hard to point at a large company these days, which is all in one physical location every day. I mean, obviously the ginormous ones have offices around the world, but even startups I'm seeing, maybe one founder's in Boston, one's in New York, one's in San Francisco. Why should they uproot their families and everything like that to just be in the same place? When the tools are there to talk and communicate and do everything. The web, the promise of the web is true. You can work just as well with someone halfway across the world as you could if they were sitting next to you. And so we found it's been great. We can find the best people in the world wherever they are. We don't have to say you have to be in San Francisco, you have to be willing to move to San Francisco. So we get fantastic folks in Alabama, and Georgia, and just random places where there's brilliant people who just are there for whatever reason. Maybe their family's there, maybe they just like it, maybe it's cheaper. There's a lot of good reasons not to live in San Francisco, just like there are to live in San Francisco. And the tools have evolved a lot. Just since we started, Skype has become really, really good.
Passionate people are out there everywhere. I think one of the secrets of entrepreneurship, or one of the tenets of entrepreneurship that I think are incredibly important, is finding passionate people and then figuring out exactly what they want to do, and then creating a framework and an opportunity for them to be successful. So it's not as much, there's passionate people all around us. The issue is can you channel that passion in a way that both benefits you in what you're trying to accomplish and benefits them for what they want to do with themselves. And
we never really had a business plan. I just always knew what we were going to do. One of our investors, when I went out to meet their partners, it was Polaris, and I'd gone out to Boston to meet the partners and to so they made sure I wasn't going to run away with their money or something. I don't know, they just wanted to meet me. And our partner there, Mike, had said, just write something, anything, because they were funding us and there was no business plan, no anything, no employees, it was just me. And so I just put something up on a wiki page, actually. I thought it was nice to have it on a wiki because that meant it was always evolving, always changing, and we could track the changes. And it was very basic. Just, a paragraph or two on what we were, what the market was, a couple paragraphs on each of the monetization opportunities we saw, upgrades on WordPress.com, advertising, hosting, those sorts of things. And I think a paragraph on me, and that was it. So it was pretty sure, I call it a 1 or 2 pager, and it was as an investor now, I do angel investing in different things. I really enjoy when there's a succinct summary of what the business is doing, what they want to do, and everything. I much prefer that to a 30-slide presentation or one of those graphs that looks like a hockey stick that everyone has. Just a little bit of a nugget.
We had a name that we sort of just assigned to.
It's confidential.
It was a name that some of us liked and some of us didn't like, and 2 of us that didn't like it decided one weekend that we were going to change it. We had a deadline for this food show we were going to, and it was going to be the first time that we presented ourselves, and we were like, that is not going to be our name. We are going to figure out a good name. We need to like put it on business cards and t-shirts, and so we actually just spent the whole weekend thinking about it, and it's almost like one of those things you feel like if you're thinking about it constantly, you cannot come up with anything creative. And we ended up doing, Rob and I,
Nick, that puts
giving it
you
away.
as the odd man out.
We did this just word association. We said, what's every word that we want to associate with our business? And we like, actually, there's like a poster, it's up there, that we still have, that has every word on it. And one of those words was foodie, which is like, you know, someone who likes food. And we just, I don't know, Foodzie just came from sort of
A misspelling of the
a
word.
misspelling of the word, and then it was $7 on GoDaddy to buy it for the spelling, Foodzie, and there you go. The others were like $3,000. So
The most difficult decision that I've had to make, in 2007, when I went to sell the company, I didn't actually want to sell the company. What I wanted to do was sell part of the company, the shareholders take cash, and continue to own and grow the company going forward. So when we went out to market with it, we had a whole number of great VC firms that were interested in participating, Bessemer Venture, Sequoia Capital, but in addition we had outright acquirers. Amazon was an interested party, Wolseley was an interested party, and a whole host of others. So the hardest decision that I had to make was, do I sell out part of the business to venture capital and keep running with it, or do I sell the whole business now to some strategic acquirer? And that was a very, very difficult decision. Ultimately, what swayed me to sell the company to Wolseley was I believed, after spending time with VC and spending time with Wolseley, that the best long-term interest for the employees were going to be served best by doing an acquisition at this time as opposed to taking on VC. So I ended up selling the entire business to Wolseley.
Probably what shifted more is not the amount that I work, it's what I do when I work. Where before it used to be probably, 80% coding and 100% documentation, and it probably added up to more than a full-time job. Now I focus a lot on sort of the architecture, basically what direction is WordPress going. Are we strategically going the place that's important? And then finding the best people to work with and sort of enabling them. So Automattic is now, I guess, 54 people today, maybe 55. And I've hired all of them, and it's fantastic to be able to work with these folks and see both their ideas and creativity and where that drives all of our products. WordPress.com, GoDaddy, Intense Debates, After the Deadline, all the different things we do. And also kind of steer things in different directions, so there'll be more sort of happy intersections between our products, and at a very high, 10,000 foot level, are we going the direction I think the web is going?
When we first started Foodzie, I know each of us actually had corporate jobs that we were working full-time, and I know I was actually working 2 jobs at the time in addition to Foodzie, so I think we were all working probably 16 to 18 hours a day, including our day jobs and Foodzie. And then when we joined Techstars, even though we shed those corporate jobs, I don't think very much changed because
the motto is do more faster, so you just pretty much fit in as much as you possibly can.
Yeah.
But no, usually, through Techstars it was typically 12 to 16 hour days. It's probably around 12-hour days now. There's just a lot to do, so.
You find your cadence, and I think that with Techstars you have meetings and advisors that are willing to meet with you all day, so that's what you do during the day. And so when do you execute? Well, at night. So a lot of that has kind of continued into the startup kind of day to day. We have certain things that we get done during the day and certain things that we get done in the mornings and in the evenings.
Being an entrepreneur is incredibly difficult on your family life. At least my experience has been, unless you're one of these 4-hour work week guys, can figure out how to build massively successful businesses and spend just a couple hours a week doing it. You and Carlton Sheets on the internet can get together and get rich quick. But for me, it was a very, very hard path. It required a lot of compromise in all of my interpersonal relationships, not just family. So during the startup phase of my business, I spent very little time with my family. I spent very little time with my friends. I spent very little time recreating. It wasn't until we really started to hit critical mass that I could really take a step back and kind of re-engage my personal relationships. So yeah, there's a real cost. There's a real cost.
When I was a little kid, I thought that to have a business, all you needed was a business card. So early on, we had gotten some software. I don't remember what it was called. It had like a teddy bear on it. Maybe it was, later I probably used Microsoft Publisher or something. And I'd make business cards. You get the Avery perforated ones. I'd make business cards all the time. So I had like a window washing business. I had a cleaning business, which is funny because I don't like cleaning. And eventually I started building computers, design. I just made business cards for everything. I don't know if you could call any of them businesses, right? But it was sort of fun, and I consider them businesses. So I'd go and I'd meet someone new, and I'd hand them like 5 business cards for 5 different things. Be like, I can clean your windows and build your computer and design your website and all these sorts of stuff. So that was fun. So
first experience as an entrepreneur for me was, I think it was roughly around the 4th grade. I was pretty young, and what I was doing was actually arbitrage with candy. So there were little kids, and their parents wouldn't buy them candy. So what I would do is I would convince my parents into allowing me to buy large sums of candy so that I could resell it.
So me and my neighbor, a guy named Ricky Smalls, we recognized that the concession stand at the T-ball games down the road were selling candy bars at a huge premium to what you could buy them at downtown. So we set up a candy stand in between the ballpark, where the road that people would walk through on their way to the ballpark, and we'd buy the candy downtown and then arbitrage it for 20 to 30 cents more, but 20 to 30 cents less than what was being sold at the ballpark. So we advertised it as inexpensive candy, and it was we made enough money to support our candy habit.
So I think to be a great entrepreneur, you need to be tasteful. You have to have a sense. It's more important than design, it's a sense of taste. The idea of what makes sense for your users. When are you crossing the line of being too obtrusive or selling too hard or being too obnoxious? When do you need to push a little bit? I guess some of this is product design, but I always take it back to taste. Seems to be the thing that you can't really teach. Almost everything else you can teach. I think you have to, people are the most important thing, so you have to be either really good or really lucky or really willing to iterate on your team. Just finding the best folks in the world and giving them the responsibility and opportunity to create wonderful things with you. You have to hire people smarter than yourself. And then finally, you have to really, really, really love what you do. Because being an entrepreneur is hard sometimes. I mean, it's a lot of work, and sometimes it doesn't work, maybe for years. And if you don't really love it, I don't think it's worth it. Because the journey has to be as rewarding as the end goal. I don't think you can go into entrepreneurship thinking, oh, I'm going to sell this company or go public and be really rich. Because then what if you don't? I mean, what have you created? Or even if sometimes success is just as bad as failure. What if you reach all that and then it's just kind of empty? Like you don't have any reason to go to work the next day. If you create something that every step of the way you love the people you work with and the products you create and your customers and everything like that, I mean, it's the last thing you think about before you go to sleep. It's the first thing you think about when you wake up in the morning. Then even if it totally flames out, after 2 years and you've lost $10 million of your investors' money and everything like that, at least you really loved what you did every day. And I think that's sort of what you need to do, because at that point you sort of dust yourself off and go on to the next idea. I've met lots of entrepreneurs who, I remember talking to one that blew me away. He told me a story about how his previous company, I think, lost $180 million in venture capital. And this was mind-boggling to me, because I had 2 thoughts. I thought, well, how do you spend $180 million? Like, did you buy an island or a country or something? And then 2, I thought, well, that's amazing that you have new investors. So, I mean, Silicon Valley in particular is very forgiving in terms of, people learn from their mistakes. And so sometimes someone who's failed at something is actually a better entrepreneur than someone who's never failed at anything.
I think for new entrepreneurs, I mean, I would recommend not starting your business alone. It's so hard to do it. I mean, we started the three of us, but you have to do a lot with a little. And I think one person is almost too little for you really to get far enough. So I would recommend, as a first-time entrepreneur, to get a partner or two partners.
I feel like, I don't remember the exact list. I probably have it written down somewhere. But there's some books I read, especially when I was getting started, that have influenced me a lot. So things like, all of Seth Godin's books are awesome, particularly around sort of customer centricity. I read The Art of the Start by Guy Kawasaki, and that inspired me a lot when I was getting going. Good to Great, Crossing the Chasm, all the classic business books. I think partly because I was brand new at all this business stuff, I was kind of worried someone would figure out I didn't actually know what I was doing, so I still was reading voraciously all these different things. And you learn different stuff, and you can apply it to your businesses. I read a fantastic book called Talent is Overrated that really changed how I think about growing people and hiring and the approach there. And also just talking to a lot of other entrepreneurs. I'm really fascinated by how the companies have taken approaches to the same problems that we have, both in the beginning, in the middle, and sort of at the giant scale. Like, I would love to just spend a couple days on like Google's intranet, just see how they done everything, because I bet they've built a lot of things that are really cool tools that maybe we should have at Automattic, and maybe we should build. And it's the hardest thing is generally, it's not having ideas or anything like that. It's deciding what's the most important stuff to work on. What is the number one thing that will, increase our value to our users, or increase the value of the business, or really make an impact on people's lives out of the 50 things that we could possibly be doing right now. And that is by far and away the hardest decisions I face every day, because I like everything. Everything's cool.
The thing that I would tell entrepreneurs as you get started is don't underestimate, really digging in deep with your potential customers or who your customers will be, and get as much information as you possibly can before you start building the thing, and validating that it's something they actually want. I think one of the downsides of being an entrepreneur is that you're an idea person and you come up with this idea and you think it's going to be awesome, and until you go talk to your customers and see if it actually is awesome to them, you don't know if that is a business that's going to be worth all of the time you're going to have to put into it. And it's a big sacrifice, it's a lot of work, and you should know that you're going after something that your customer really wants.
I would say also, as an entrepreneur, you have to surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, and you have to surround yourself with people who are like-minded and reaching for the stars. So if you're thinking about being an entrepreneur or thinking about starting your own business, surround yourself with people who are also doing that, because there's no accounting for how helpful that can be.
Is get started now. There's no reason to delay. I talk to a lot of people that are thinking about starting a business, or they have an idea, but they can't get around to it. It's this is an absolutely opportune time to start a business. In a down economy, there's not a lot of job opportunities out there. Use this as an opportunity to launch. Just get started today. Act now.